take a look at it and we'll see how it behaves first. And there's a few things that are interesting about this. Each app sort of introduces a few new things and reinforces some old things as well. I do have to confess there's one thing that I'm missing something on as I'm looking at the code. I don't understand why something is working that way, so maybe we can figure that one out. I have to say, either I need a new set of eyes to look at it, or I have a mental block, or what. But anyhow, here's how the application behaves. It's essentially like a little Sketchpad when you fire it up. All right. You have a menu option for color, line width, erase, clear, and save image. So I can pick the color, and with the color I can pick the alpha level and red, green, blue. So I can pick, with the slider controls, red, let's say, at 50% opacity. And then I can click that, and now I'm drawing with that. Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry about that. Let me go and pull the screen down. Yeah, sometimes everything works on this screen, sometimes they'll have that. Okay. So now I can go and hit the menu again and change the color to, let's say, purple. And the next thing I do goes like that. And again, it's actually a little hard to see. Yeah. But again, with the opacity, notice how it's overlapping, so it's not completely solid. I can also change the line width to make little bitty swirls. I can erase, which erases everything apparently. I thought it gave us an eraser. And there's a clear, which I'm not really sure the difference between erase and clear. I'd actually never tried erase, but that's why I assumed it was what it was. And then finally, I can save the image to my gallery, and I can look it up that way. All right. Now, interesting things. The file saving is one thing that's interesting. The menu is pretty good. The menu is by and large stuff that we've done before. But again, it'll be fun to review that, and good to review that. Now here's the one thing that is kind of neat about this is, and I have to be very careful. Whoops. If I move this, oh, I get it. Clear gives you a clear palette to draw with. Yeah. As opposed to now I can't do it. I was doing it before accidentally. If I move this, if I shake it, it actually comes up with a dialog that will allow me to erase it. So if I, again, shake it, it comes up without touching it, then I can go and erase. All right? So that's the difference between erase and clear. So I can draw and then go and clear. Okay, I give up. I'm not sure what it does. All right. So the interesting thing about this application, the things that are brand new are the saving the file is one thing. The and the actual movement of it to enact some action is something else. So we will take a look at this code, and we'll review those parts of it. All right. All right, there we go. All right, first of all, let's see if there's anything exciting in the manifest. I was just talking you up, laptop. Don't fail me now. Yep. Yeah, usual in manifest. Let's see. I did want to check the orientation. Does it lock the orientation? Yes, it does. It locks the orientation to portrait. Fair enough. All right. Next, let's look at the resources. And in the values, anything exciting there? Typical values. All right. Anything in the layout of interest? There's the main. The main has the view in it, a custom view that's created. All right. Again, using that syntax which we did before, which you can do if it is a defined in an external class, Doodle View, which it is, as opposed to an inner class. So we can use that syntax to refer to it. Now, the reason they don't do anything with the namespace goofy like I had to do in my custom one is because they don't have any particular attributes that are unique to this. If you remember my watermark image, there were some attributes that were passed from the XML. Here, there's no real attributes that are passed to the XML, so there's really nothing new in it. We then have two dialogues, one for the width of the line, and one for the colors. The colors having 3 of these seek bars, and the width having 1 of them. Right. We open the application, and again, it does the typical things that it does. It inflates the main view so that we have our view, which contains, again, the Doodle View, which we'll be looking at in a minute. We grab a pointer to that Doodle View so that we can do stuff with it. We initialize some acceleration values. Interesting, the acceleration is the gravity of the Earth, which looks interesting. And then we enable the accelerometer listening. And that's going to be the code that is going to be listening and waiting for the movement of it. All right, on pause, we do some things. For example, we don't listen for the accelerometer. Here we enable it where we set our sensor manager, and we register the listener related to that sensor. Here, first argument to this is we register this object as what is going to be the listener for that accelerometer. So we use our sensor manager, and we use this to register this object as our listener. And what does this object do? Well, this object goes and has on it an on-sensor changed event. So in other words, when something happens as far as us shaking it. If the dialog isn't visible, all right, so in other words, if a dialog's up, you can shake it all you want and nothing's going to happen. All right, we grab the values x, y, and z, all right, in three-dimensional space. And we save the last acceleration, which, if you remember, the last acceleration was set to the gravity of the Earth. All right, probably 0, 0, 0. Then we look and we do some calculation to figure out how much of a change in acceleration there was. We do this calculation here. Current acceleration equals x squared plus y squared plus z squared. We then take and multiply the current acceleration by the difference between the current acceleration and the last acceleration. And we look to see if it's greater than the acceleration threshold. Now, the acceleration threshold is defined as a constant, I believe up here, and it's set to 1500. This, in effect, is setting the sensitivity of the shake, how hard you have to shake it for it to do its thing. So if we wanted it more sensitive, we could make a lower number there. And then probably if I bumped it, it would go. If we wanted to make it where you had to really go crazy with it, then we would have to, we could make a higher number on it. But if the acceleration is greater than the threshold, then it pops up the dialog and asks the user if they want to clear it or not. All right? And if they answer yes, then it calls on the dialog, or I'm sorry, on the Doodle View, the clear. All right? Now, one thing I had some questions about from another student, and I just want to make sure, and I think we talked about this last time, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but remember how this works. This set content view is what, as we say, inflates the layout. It takes that XML and it makes some objects out there, all right, that relate to the layout. What this does is this grabs a pointer to those objects. It looks in the view and finds the thing in the view that has the ID of DoodleView. It then registers that, a pointer to that object, as my instance variable DoodleView. So now this guy knows about that DoodleView. As soon as I execute this, right, I have a DoodleView object, but this guy doesn't know about it. This guy, well, I won't say this guy doesn't know about it. This guy doesn't know how to reference it until we go and then we say DoodleView equals cast the DoodleView, find the thing that has that ID. So now DoodleView is an instance variable that points to that DoodleView, and therefore we can use that in our class, such as in here. Oops. I passed it, yeah. Yeah, in here, yeah, when we decide that we want to clear it. Right. As far as the menu goes then, it has, again, on Create Options menu, we override the default on the view. All right. Again, that, you know, there is I say event, but I mean method. That's again, that's a side effect of teaching some Microsoft technologies, ASP.NET. The onCreate method is a method that exists on the view. All right. But we're going to customize that for this. By default, there is no menu associated with the view, so we're going to add one. All right. And what we're going to do is we're going to add, again, all the different menu options onto this. And then we are going to display the menu. Right. When an option is selected, we look to see which item got selected. Then based on that, we display the color dialog, the color dialog, the line width dialog, the erase menu option, the clear option, and all that. This actually may be answering two questions at once. If you remember, I had two questions. One of my questions was, I said in the introduction that there was something I couldn't quite figure out. I may have just figured it out. All right. The second question is what in the world is the difference between clear and erase? All right. And I have a feeling a bug. I have a feeling this is a bug because let's look at the behavior. Let's see if I'm. Erase sets the line color to white. So let's see what happens. Let's go in here. And let's go in and let's set our color to yellow. Right? And we can't see yellow. So let's go and set it to blue. Actually, I said it to purple. I must have drugged something wrong. That's all right. And then I'll go in here and I'll put erase. Oh. There we go. Last time I seemed to erase something, which when I come to my mystery with this application, maybe we'll be able to figure out what that is. At any rate, now if we go and hit clear. Okay. So I'm barking up the wrong tree at this point. So anyhow, erase effectively makes it an eraser by effectively matching the background color. Now, a better way to do that, in my opinion, would be to have a mechanism to set the background color. All right? This assumes that the color is always white. What if we don't want a white color? What if we want we're all happy because finally the sun's out, so we want a blue sky. All right? So we would want to set the background color as blue and then draw on top of that. All right? If we did that, then the erase would be to set the color to whatever our background color was, as opposed to always setting it to white. And that would be a simple modification that would make it a lot easier. We might actually do that if we have a few minutes in class today. We might add the ability to set a background color. All right. The color dialog. We'll only look at the color dialog because that is probably, if we got that one, we will get the other one as well. The line width one. Because the line width one only has one, and the other one has, well, we'll look at both of them. What the heck. All right, so we set up our dialog for color. All right, let's follow through the menu. I go and press the menu button. All right, that pops up, which corresponds to this piece of code here. All right, all the menu options show up. I then select that I want color. And that pops up, which corresponds to this code here. Again, notice what we do. We create a new dialog. A dialog is a kind of view. All right. We set content view of that dialog to our color dialog XML. So we're kind of back like we did at the beginning. We're inflating that XML file and making it this view's layout, content view rather. We set the title, we set this cancelable, and so on. All right. Now what we have to do is we have to grab references to those different controls in the dialog. What's in the dialog? There are 4 seek bars. There's a seek bar for red, green, blue, and alpha. All right, actually alpha, red, green, and blue. So we grab, again, here's the alpha seeker, here is the red seeker, and so on down the line. So we go and grab references to those. All right. We then, set our listener on all 4 of those sliders to the same thing, right? Because if we change any of them, we're effectively changing the color. So we can handle that the same way. All right. And let's see. We initialize the progress of that with the value that it already is. All right. Now, how do you suppose progress is the bar that goes across? What parameters do you suppose we have to configure for that progress bar in the XML? We're not looking at the XML now. Let's see if we can think through what parameters we have to configure for it. Yeah, in the XML file. Yeah, you do. You do. Okay, so there probably is that parameter that you configure, sort of an initial value. Yeah. And definitely you have to determine, have to set the scale, right? Because with colors, we want the value to range from 0 to 255. With something else, we don't want it to go from 0 to 255. We want it to go from, maybe, let's say if it was a percentage, it would go from 0 to 100. Or if it was a temperature range, maybe it would go from, minus 50 to 120 or something. So we have to give like the legit range for this dialog. And if we look in here, sure enough, it shows that the maximum is 255 for that. And so that's why when we go and set this, we're giving an initial value for it. Yeah, sure. Well, no, not really. Yeah, it just defaults it to the space that it has available. Because really the important part of it is really what the width represents and as you go across. So again, in this, what this is doing is this is grabbing from our color. And what is that color variable? Our color variable is the DoodleView's drawing color, which, again, we have a pointer to the DoodleView, so we can grab the color that we've been painting with, and we can initialize those things to that value. So in other words, if I go in and I pick that I want bright red and set color. So the alpha's at 255. The red is at 255. The blue and green are at 0. And then I go set color, draw a bit, hit that again, and say color. Those values have the values that they had before. So that's what this little section of code is doing. Repeat that. Mm-hmm. Right. No. Okay. What do I want to look at? When I pick a color, all right, we haven't gotten to this part of it yet, but when I pick a color, it calls my Doodle View, and the Doodle View is this guy here. The Doodle View is this view here. So one of the attributes, this is a custom view, and one of the attributes of that is a color, the color we want to draw with. So for example, I go here and I make the color purple, let's say. And I can draw purple. All right. That Doodle View has an instance variable called color, the color that I'm drawing with. All right. So when I go and I press the menu for this, boom, menu, color, these get initialized to the values of the Doodle View's color. All right. I will then change it through this dialog, and when I'm done changing it, then I will call the Doodle View and say, hey, by the way, I no longer want to draw in orange. I want to draw in green. So now I went and set it to green, so I can draw in green. And when I go back to the menu and hit that, it brings up, it asks the Doodle View, hey, what color you're drawing with? And then it brings that in. So what these lines of code are, here, this line of code asks the Doodle View, hey, what color are you using? And then, based on the color that gets returned from that Doodle View, we initialize those seek bars, so it doesn't reset it every time, right? If you think about it, we might want to start out with, you know, we might want to start out with a very bright green. We might then want to take down the green a little bit. And then take the green down a little bit more. And so on. So it's good that it remembers what it was. That way we can tweak it if we want to. All right. Let's see. We show the dialog. Our button is waiting and listening for a click. Now, on progress bar change, all right, what does that do? That gets fired off when any of those progress bars get moved, any of those seek bars. Remember, because we're doing the same thing for each of them. When they created this, it didn't really make sense to have like a separate handler for each progress bar, right? Because regardless of which progress bar they move, we're going to go and we're going to redo the color. We're going to change the color in some way, either the opacity of it or the red, green, or blue. So what we do then is we grab a reference to each of the seek bars, and to this little patch down here in our color dialog, this little patch right here that shows us the color that we picked. So in other words, I can, if I make it red, it shows me that's the color of red I've picked. If I decide, I don't really want that, I want a little darker red, I can move it. Yeah, that's the red I want. All right. So as we slide that, and as we slide any of them, it takes all of their input and redraws that little color swatch down at the bottom. So what it's doing is it's grabbing a pointer to each of those seek bars, And it sets the background color to a color using the ARGB formula where it gets the opacity from the alpha, the red from the red, green, green, blue, blue. All right? So, these methods are there because they're required to implement that interface, but we're not doing anything special when they start and end the touch. All right? We're doing something special when it changes. Finally, we have the OnClickListener that represents what happens when the user goes and presses this Set Color button. And what happens is this. All right? We do effectively the same thing. We grab from those progress bars the 4 values, alpha, red, green, and blue. And then we create, or rather we don't create, we set the Doodle View's drawing color. So we call the set drawing color method, set the Doodle View's drawing color, and away we go. All right. We can look at the Doodle View real quick. We see that one of the attributes that it has is actually has a paint line. All right. And when we call the set drawing color, it sets the paint line's color. All right. The paint line is defined as a line. Actually, it's defined as a paint. I'm sorry, my mistake. It's defined as like a paintbrush or a paint object. And that's the paint brush that we're going to use to draw with. And again, we go and we set the color to that. So again, we have the basic get and set. To get it so that we can initialize that dialog. Then once we've changed all the parameters, we go, and when you click the button, it will go and set that. The other things we do are set the dialog to false, dismiss the dialog, null it out. The WithBar does something very similar, all right? In fact, it's simpler because there's only the one thing. It draws a little demo of it, of how wide it's going to be, and I don't, unless you want, there's no particular reason to look at this one. Pretty much the same idea. I guess it is slightly different in that they don't do it on the, oh, no, I'm sorry, they do. I misread. Never mind. Read the name of that event. All right. Let's look at if they pick one of the other ones. All right. They pick erase, it sets the drawing color to white. So it just goes and initializes that drawing color to white without going through any sort of dialogue. Again, a better way to do it would be to have a background variable, but I digress. If they pick the clear option rather, it calls the clear method on the Doodle View. And if they click the save, it calls the save method on there. Again, one thing to notice about this that just speaks to just basic good programming practices, sort of independent of Android, is that this Doodles code here is really just sort of the, how do I want to say it? is controlling the UI, but anything real is calling the Doodle View to do. The Doodle View is the thing that's really doing the work here. It's really the thing that has the action. The Doodles app, the Doodles activity, really is just sort of a container for that. And it's hooking the user's action to things on the Doodle View. All right? That's a good question. That's a good usability question. I wouldn't necessarily want to take up any screen real estate. And I think that's why, yeah, I think that's probably why they did it. But I see your point. You actually could have, you know, if you think about designing this, to your point, because, you know, if you were drawing this, you know, you would maybe want to be, how do I say, a little more free to change things without having to go through that mechanism. But you could do something like this. Could have a drawing palette up here, and then have your dialogues here, as long as it didn't take up too much real estate. Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Thinking, thinking in terms of how you know, how this would be used. I can see that point, because if you're drawing, you don't want to be fiddling with the app. You want to be drawing. All right. And so I definitely can see the validity for that. Yeah. Right. 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 All right. I'm sure you could. All right. You actually, you know, if you think about it, you know, you could based on how long you press, you could change things, and you know, so. Well, what would it change to that? Yeah, but I'm thinking, like, for example, of the opacity, for example. The longer you hold it down, the darker it gets. You know, so that would be that's one thing that you could control that way. Well, that's great. It's a whole nother thing, really. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah, there is. We have only really covered the simple gestures. I will have to look to see where the multi-touch gestures are covered. But yeah, there's like the two-finger swipe and all that. I'll tell you, I get so used to doing that and the pinching that when I'm at a computer that doesn't support that, I'm sitting there like a fool, two-finger swiping on the mouse. Like I have a Windows laptop at home, and I'm like, why isn't it scrolling? You know, you really the interesting thing, and it's funny because, not to digress, but the whole Apple Samsung lawsuit, the basis for that was, you know, Samsung says, how can you patent or copyright or whatever they did, stroking two fingers across the screen? right? And Apple's point was, yeah, that sounds obvious now, but we are the ones that did it first, and it was our idea to do it that way. So, yeah, of course it sounds obvious now because it was a great idea, you know. So anyhow, I'm not a lawyer, but that was kind of the lines of the argument. You know, it is funny. It's like I think there's two kinds of innovations in the world. There's the innovation where I would have never thought of that in a million years. You know, then there's the innovation of like, why didn't someone think of that 20 years ago? You know, that's just so well thought out that immediately it becomes like just part of the land. You know, and you have to do it that way. Oh, yeah, that's nice. I still have to get used to some of the newer Macs that have they don't actually have a mouse button. You actually tap the what would you call the tracking surface or mouse pad. Yeah, that I still have to get used to. Yeah. Alrighty. So again, the point which we were saying before is that really the Doodles is just sort of, if you will, sort of like the boss, right? It is connecting everything together, but it's not really, how do I say, it's not really encroaching on what the Doodle View does, all right? The Doodle View, it tells the Doodle View, hey, set your color to this. It asks the Doodle View, hey, what's your color? It sets it to white. It asks it to clear itself. And the nice thing is then is if everything about this then is encapsulated in that. So if you were to expand this, let's say, instead of starting with a plain white background, start with an image that you could draw on top of, all right? Then, you know, clear would do something else in that sort of Doodle View, all right? But this guy doesn't need to know about it. It just asks the Doodle View, hey, go and clear. And whatever the clear means to that Doodle View, it will go and do it. Potentially, sure. Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would just be a different. It would just be a different. Different. Layout in your main XML. Instead of having the one, you could potentially have multiple. All right, let's look at the Doodle View. We've been spending all this time talking about it. All right. And what does it have? It has a bitmap for drawing and saving, a bitmap canvas to draw on, a paint for the used to draw lines on the screen, used to draw lines on the bitmap. Then it has these current paths being drawn. Yeah. First of all, keep in mind it says bitmap, but that doesn't really relate to a Microsoft BMP file. All right, a bitmap is simply, you know, there's basically in images there's two kinds of images. They're called raster images or vector images. A vector image is one where you record some sort of mathematical expression to be that. For example, if you're doing a circle, you'd have the equation for a circle. All right, that's the vector. What's nice about that is you can resize it. So in other words, if you want to make it bigger, it doesn't recreate it. It like just adds multipliers effectively to it, and you just have you've transformed that equation. So you still get a nice smooth circle. A bitmap is where, again, we'll greatly exaggerate the screen for effect. A bitmap is where there actually is stored, you know, I'll just do a few of these, the pixels, you know, a map of the bits, a map of the pixels. So if we were doing a square here, a blue square, let's say, you know, this is a raster. A raster is, the word raster is equivalent to a bitmap. Because what this is this isn't some mathematical equation for a square. This is actually like a mosaic. No, we're talking pixels. Yeah. Yeah. We're talking pixels. Well, remember, everything gets drawn as a pixel on the screen. So everything ultimately has to be a pixel on the screen. When you're talking about how it's stored or how internally it's stored, with a vector, you're not storing patterns of bits. All right? You're storing a rule or an equation or an expression to create patterns of bits. All right? Effectively, you're storing a recipe for a drawing, if you will. And just like with a recipe, if you're going to make it for 8 people instead of 4, you just double everything. All right. Same idea here. If you're going to expand a vector image, it just doubles everything, and it still ends up with a nice, smooth drawing. Now, a bitmap, and again, it may not literally store it as, let's imagine in this case, what? A 7 by 6 matrix, but effectively it does. It may not literally store that, but logically it stores actually just a matrix of pixels. All right. Now there's all kinds of compression things that you can do. A .bmp file is just totally uncompressed, and it literally stores an array or a matrix of pixels. All right. If you were to look in it, if I were to take a screenshot, for example, all right, the size of it would be pretty much the number of pixels wide the screen was times the number of pixels high it was, if I stored that as a bitmap. Now, with JPEG compression and other sorts of compression, it's clever enough to know, hey, if I have 6 of these, I don't need to store all 6 of them. I just need to store, hey, I'm going to have blue for the next 6 pixels. And you can store that a little more compressed, all right? But again, regardless of all of that, all right, when you talk about bitmap, you're talking about a map of the bits, a map of the pixels as far as, the colors for each pixels. Now, going back to this. So, this is the map of pixels. The canvas is the class in Android that allows us to draw on something. All right? So we can draw on that bitmap using the canvas. All right? Yeah. Right. Yeah, the canvas is the mechanism by which we get something on the bitmap. If we follow this through, we'll probably see a better of that. Again, that's the best way I can explain it. We'll see if maybe there's holes in my explanation or whatever as we look through this, but we can do this. All right. So let's see. All right. When we create it, we set a bunch of parameters with this. We set a default stroke width. We set a default cap of the stroke. We set a whole bunch of things. One of the things that we set, that's why if you notice when we draw on this, the cap of it is rounded. In other words, if I draw a line, it's not like a square line. It's like there's a little edge on it. Or a rounded edge, rather, rounded corner. But you could specify that, yeah. Yeah, if you wanted to. The other thing to note is it sets the anti-alias. Anyone know what an anti-alias means? No. All right. Well, I'm very pragmatic, so we'll talk about what this relates to, what this relates to here. All right. keep in mind that, again, on a much magnified view, this is what we have. All right? So, let's say I was drawing a diagonal line. And you see this a lot with typography. I'll try to Google something real quick with typography. I was looking at a good example today. Let's say we had a diagonal line. All right? The diagonal line, if we were to put it under a microscope, let's make one that's 2 pixels thick. It might look something like this. If I'm doing this right. Right? Now, that can be, in some cases, noticeable to people. And you would see it like a staircase, a jagged edge, instead of a smooth line. So what they actually do is they fool your eye into thinking that it is straight. And how do they do that? Well, and again, this might not be the best example, but they might make this just like this pixel, not quite as dark a blue, but a little bit lighter shade of blue. All right? And that fools the eye into thinking, hey, it's not a jagged staircase thing, it's a smooth line. So let's go, I hope I can find the same example that I found earlier. Let's go and try to find. Okay, we'll ask the geek girl this one. All right, and I will make it bigger in case you can see. Actually, we can see. All right, if we look at this, this is not aliased. So if you notice there's kind of a sawtooth action there. Why is that? Well, because the pixels in this one are just black and white. What's the difference here? Why does this look smoother? Because some of those pixels that are white, they've made like gray instead, a very dark gray. Let's see if we can make this a lot bigger. To see it. There you can see again the black and white. Here, if you look, like there's one, there's one, there's one. And it's noticeable that it's gray. All right. But the idea is that you're not looking at it that magnified. You're looking at it like this. So that's good enough to trick the eye into seeing a smooth curve. All right? Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. If you're one of those people that have that kind of great eyesight, we're going to mess it up for you by adding a little bit of blurring on the end. Yeah. All right. So we set up our paintbrush with all that. On side change. All right. On size change, rather. Again, what that relates to is if you switch this from landscape to, or portrait to landscape, or if something like the keyboard pops up, now this application doesn't run into this because the manifest says, hey, you're not allowed to it's always going to be portrait, for number one. And number two, there's nothing really to pop up the keyboard. So I don't really know how this would fire off. All right, other than on the initial load. Let's just, for giggles though, let's go in and let's change the manifest so that we can let's change the manifest so that we can switch it to landscape, and let's see the effect of this. Not the alias thing. I'm curious all the way around. We'll get to my confusion with this in a second. So let's go into manifest, and let's get rid of the screen orientation. Now let's go and run this guy. Oh, okay. It's moaning that I changed the orientation of it. So let's go in and uninstall this real quick. Now let's run it. Okay, so we draw on here, then we turn it. It's going to have an effect. Oh, well. Let me try changing the color. All right. Never mind then. What I'm looking, I'll tell you my mystery. And again, if we have to cut this off, then maybe we can look at this mystery. I don't get this. I don't get why the onDraw event draws every line that we have using the paint line, how it keeps the different colors. There's only one paint line, right? Each paint line only has one color associated with it. So how is it that when the onDraw event goes, it looks like it is looping through the list of lines that we have and drawing them, all right? Yet it is only using one paint line variable. So how come that onDraw event then doesn't like change everything to that color? No. Paint line is just simply a instance variable. That's what I thought at first. Right. Right. No, it isn't. Let's do this. Let us. Nope. Paint line is simply a instance variable. Let's try this. On size change, let's invalidate. Yeah. Let's, because my thought is that onDraw event isn't running when I think it is. That's my answer to the question. So let's go and here we go. Black line. Change the color. Red line. Then I will turn it. Turn it. Nope. Right. Yeah. Let me try something else while I'm up to tricks here. Well, the orientation that would make the height and width change. No. No. Let's do this. Let's go in here and let's make it so that when they change the width of it, I invalidate the view. So here's where they change the width. On progress changed. I want to do Doodle View because I'm really the size change I'm interested in, but I'm also interested on why that onDraw event isn't doing what I thought it should be doing. All right, so let's go and try this. So when I change the width, I'm invalidating it. So I go and draw. I'll go and change the color. Then, when I go and change the width, I invalidated and it still didn't. So the onDraw did kick in because I invalidated it, and yet, well, that's a special challenge question. That might be your next quiz. Yeah, I don't know. That's weird. That's weird. Yeah. I suspect I'm just plain missing something. Yeah. All right. Anyhow, where were we? We were at here. And let's on the Doodle View. All right. The clear goes, and again, it refreshes the screen. We have our set drawing color, set width, and all that. OnDraw looks like it loops through. Looks like it loops through for every path that we have, for every line that we have, it goes and it draws that line. And then the onTouch event is what, again, goes and grabs the coordinates of the path that the user moves and adds that to the array of that, and it draws it to the bitmap canvas. Path reset. I get it. It is that bitmap canvas is, okay, that bitmap canvas is what holds all the previous touches. Okay? So if I go, the question was this. If I go into this app and draw some things, change the color, draw some more. Why is it that those stay their right colors when the onDraw event loops through and paints every little path with the same paintbrush? Here's the answer. This onDraw event is only drawing the latest round of things that we touched. All right? Everything else gets drawn when it gets drawn to touch-ended. Everything else gets added and drawn to that bitmap canvas. And that bitmap canvas then has all the things that happened previous, all right? And therefore, that draw event is just drawing the more recent one. So it's saving those, effectively it's saving a copy of it so that every new thing comes in, can get drawn. Yeah, we were wondering why that is, and I'm pretty sure. I'm not 100% satisfied that I understand that aspect of it. That's something that I can, that we can look into as far, going forward. Any questions about what we looked to here? There is a section of saving the image. All right. This is pretty typical for saving it. Here, notice we were discussing bitmap images before. All right. And bitmap, again, not necessarily being a Microsoft BMP format, but being raster as opposed to a vector image. What we're doing when we save it is we're actually specifying to compress it as a JPEG. So you can save things. Really, the different image formats for raster images like PNG and GIF and JPEG are simply different styles of compression. All right? And depending on the nature of the image, one may be more effective than the other. In this case, if it's available, the GIF would probably be a better way to save this, because a GIF is more compressed, more heavily compressed for line drawings than JPEGs, which typically work for photographs. Now, any questions about the part we covered? There's a few things hanging on this that we'll tighten up at some point. All right, here is the question that I have. All right, and this is more of a logistic one. There are 4 people in this class. All right, 2 of them I know have been typically watching the videos. Right, Joey's been watching the videos, and Ben has apparently he's been getting swamped at work, so he's been watching the videos. Near as I know, they're still engaged in the class. They're just not physically here. All right. So typically we have 2 people in class here, which is fine. I'm okay with that. I don't particularly like to talk to an empty room, so that would be problematic. But 1 or 2 doesn't matter, all right? But next week, Patrick isn't going to be here, okay? And you will be here Thursday, and I will not be here the following Tuesday. All right, so let's map out these dates. 2 weeks from last Tuesday, yes. All right. Let's put some dates up here. November 6th, November 8th, and November 13th, and November 15th. These are the next 4 class sessions. All right. Pardon me? No, just this class, yeah. I'm only out this date. So who is out? MZ is out for this date. Patrick and Mark are out for this date. And Patrick is out for this date. And this date, everyone should be back. All right. Well, if Mark's not going to be here, then we're sort of back to the same dilemma as this. Here is one possibility I entertained, and you tell me if this is a good idea or not. Because despite what has transpired this semester, I'm not big on canceling class. I only do it under fairly rare conditions and hurricanes. All right. So one possibility is, and I thought of this right before class, we missed the homework assignment because I was stupid and I forgot to assign a homework assignment. All right. One thing that we could do is we could have these 3 classes as sort of an independent work time, and I would be here to help you if you have questions. I wouldn't stay if no one's here, but if you wanted to come in and talk about the project, I could assign a project that was worth more than the typical number of points. So this covers 2 weeks, so it would be probably a 15-point assignment. It would be almost like a mini semester project, all right? And I could assign that, and I would lean towards letting you envision and make up your own project, because coming up with like ideas for applications, that's like good, right? That's kind of what you do. That's one option I could do. Is we could cancel classes for these days, cancel formal classes for these days. I would probably show up, or I would survey people to see if they are showing up. And if they were, I'd be available to assist you with your projects and give input or feedback or whatever. But then we could have due on this day sort of the mini project. And so we would not meet formally as a class for these 3 days, every day but this day. Next week I could be here if anyone wants me to. If Patrick and Mark are out, unless Joey was planning on coming in that day, which no. Okay, we'll cancel that one, I guess I could come in this day, Mark, if you wanted, or we could correspond via email. All right. And Ben, if you're out there watching, let me know your view on this. Is everyone okay with this? Yeah. Probably, yeah. As long as what you turn in is like something that is completed. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, that is probably okay. But, I mean, it should do something. In other words, not like, well, I have this giant application and here are the menus for it, and that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm hesitant to give a carte blanche, because you do have me on tape here, so you could rewind the tape and play it at the trial, when. But yeah, if it's a subset of the functionality, as long as there is some functionality. Now, if everyone is okay with that, objections? Right. Yes. Yeah. 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 I'm just not here Tuesday evening. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I'll write up the details of this, and I'll post it within the next day or two. All right, and then we can go from there. I don't like to penalize people for being ambitious. You know what I mean? So if you say you are going to, write a mind reading application that is right 95% of the time, and you only get it to work 90% of the time, I'm not going to give you a bad grade. You know what I mean? So yeah. So if you shoot for something big and you don't quite make it, that's okay. I would rather encourage you to shoot big, and if you have to scale it down, that's fine, as opposed to like, well, here, this is an application that adds 2 and 2 together. And you can't even enter in the values. It just always gives you 4. Excellent. Excellent. All right, well, we will go with that. I will write up the formal details with this. This will encourage people also, by the way, to do their patriotic duty on the 6th and vote and take down their election signs and either pop the champagne or, I don't know, have a shot and a beer to console yourself, depending on your political background, depending on how it comes out. So either there'll be room to celebrate or room to commiserate. So, all right, I will write this up. We'll go with that approach. Yes, sure. Yes. No. What the question is the one lab that is asking you to make it look different for different screen sizes. All right. Really, essentially, how can we do that? We could do that a couple of different ways. One way we could do that is with a different resource. Effectively, we can do it with different resource files. For example, we could have a resource file that had the sizes of things, that had the dimensions of things. And we could make a dimension large file that says, for on a large screen, the image, which normally is 200 dp, let's say, for example, is 400 dp, because we have more space. All right? That's one way to do it. What would be another way to do it? I shouldn't be answering questions. I should be asking you guys questions. What would be another way to do it? That's one way to do it, is you could have a different dimension file based on the size of the screen. No. It does it the same way that it reads like the resource files for like language. It knows, for example, if your device is set to French, and if it's set to French, it applies then the resource files that you have -fr. Likewise, it knows if you're on a large device and uses a resource file set for large. Yeah. 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 If you look, the precise word for that is resource qualifier. Like, for example, like the -fr that we put at the end of our strings is, is a valid resource qualifier, a country name. Well, on this. Yeah. I forget exactly what example that's in. But like, for example, the -HDP, HDPI, that's also a resource qualifier. -large, I believe, is for a large screen. Well, you'll have a value. Okay, right now we have a values, so it would be values -large, or whatever. What's another way that you could do it? You could change the appearance of the screen, by the way, other than the dimensions file. Uh-huh. Right. Right. A different way you could do it is you could have a layout -large, and then your main XML could maybe, instead of having, let's say, on a large screen, maybe you have 2 images as opposed to 1 image, because you got more space, so you can throw a second image on there. Yep. Yeah, you could. Right. Yeah, you could. Did you finish it? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Part of this was again to show the demonstration of the power in the framework. The stuff that's already sort of baked into it that we can just tap into. All right. The thing that I just had to beat myself over the head with is density versus screen size. Every time I saw HD, I thought like, oh, big screen. No, not a big screen, a dense screen. Right. Right. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. 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 I think my phone is high density, and I think most of the other devices that I have floating around, like here from LC, are medium density. So the phone is the one that I could. Droid X2, a Motorola. No, it's maybe about a year ago, maybe 6 months. Oh, is that the Retina? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Oh, right. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Um, which one do I have my eyes on now? Is that the Samsung Galaxy? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's the one that I kind of been eyeing up. But I think I got this one for a while. Unless I break it or something. No, I'm just kidding. Of course they do. Yeah. 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 Well, that's good. I'm pretty happy with my Droid X2, but again, that's only because I haven't seen the newer ones. Then I won't be happy anymore. Funny how that works, huh? Next class will be 2 weeks from today. Right. Yes. I will document this. Yes, I will document this. And again, I hate to do it, but I guess the teacher of me says that, sometimes you do a better job teaching when you just kind of let people go. Yeah, and so I think this is good, and again, it makes up for the 5 points that we missed. Because I love at the end now I don't have too big a class here, so that's not an issue. But I love at the end of the year when everything adds up to 100 points, and I don't have to do any calculation. In my other classes, if it adds up to 102 points, I got to prorate, I got to write a spreadsheet, and I love when I can just say sum of here to here, boom, that's the grade. It's the little things that make it easier for you. Yeah. All righty. Oh, go ahead. Okay. That's a good question. I will argue that we need to run it no matter what. All right, and because I argued that we needed to run this class no matter what. All right, and the next class I think I can make an even more compelling argument for, because obviously if there's only 4 people in this class, at most there could be 4 people in that class, and that's if everyone were to register for it. Probably the issue, which is of no concern for you unless you feel bad for me and want to bring me food, will be how much I'll get paid for. I might not get paid the full amount for teaching that. I probably should have hit the mic. It seems that way sometimes, but no, I don't. So yeah, that would probably be the only thing. Because what they do essentially probably is they would treat it like an independent study. All right, and I get paid less for an independent study than I do for a full-blown class. No. It's in person. I would plan to do the same thing I do this time. Yeah, I think I made it the same time slot with the thought if you folks could make it now, hopefully you could also make it in the spring. Right. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing to me. We have to figure out summer soon. We have to figure out finalize summer schedule soon too. So.